They found her running barefoot down the empty country road, her pink dress soaked in mud, and her screams slicing through the quiet forest like a warning from something beyond this world. Her tiny hands trembled violently as she chased the roaring motorcycles with everything she had left. Her voice cracked, splitting the silence with words that made even the hardest men freeze in disbelief. They hung my mom on a tree. Please save her. If you're watching this right now, hit like, comment, share, and subscribe if you still believe kindness exists in this world. And tell us where you're watching from. Now, listen closely. This story will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Colt Henderson, leader of the Iron Heaven Riders, rode at the front of nearly 100 roaring Harleys when he saw the small figure stumbling toward the road. He braked so hard the tires shrieked. Behind him, the sea of motorcycles slowed like thunder collapsing into silence. The little girl, later known as Harlo Grace, could barely stand. Tears and dirt streaked her face, her lungs fighting for air. Colt saw everything instantly. The raw red marks around her wrists, her trembling legs, and eyes wide with a terror no child should ever know. Harlo tried to speak, but only pointed toward the dark forest. Colt didn't hesitate. He scooped her onto his bike, her tiny fingers clutching his leather vest like it was the last safe thing left in her world. The riders followed Colt into the woods, their boots sinking into soft earth, branches cracking under their weight. The air grew thicker with every step, and Harlo's heartbeat shook through her chest like a frightened drum. Then they saw it, a clearing open like a wound in the forest, and beneath a massive oak tree, swaying in the cold breeze, hung a woman, Harlo's mother, Aubrey Grace. Her toes barely touched the ground, her hands bound, her body motionless. The riders, men who had stared death in the eye more times than they could count, went silent, completely silent. Colt sprinted forward, lifting the woman's weight, while another biker cut the rope. Aubrey collapsed into his arms like a flower crushed under storm winds. She wasn't dead, but she was terrifyingly close. Harlo fell to the ground beside her mother, gripping her hand, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Colt felt something tear open inside him, something he thought was long dead, the grief of losing his own daughter years ago. He made a promise right there. He would not lose this child. Not today. The riders formed a protective circle around Aubrey and Harlo. One man ran for medical gear. Another scanned the forest, gun drawn. Colt covered Aubrey with his vest, tried to warm the cold, fading life inside her. Slowly, haltingly, Harlo told him everything. The men who broke into their small house, the threats, the ropes, how she escaped through a loose board in the wall, how her mother was taken into the woods and left to die, how she ran barefoot for hours, searching for anyone who might listen, and how she found a wall of motorcycles instead of monsters. Colt didn't need the full story. He didn't care who the men were or what they wanted. All he cared about was this. The people who tried to kill these two were still out there, and they weren't coming back. The riders carried Aubrey out of the forest with absolute precision. Colt held Harlo on his chest the whole time, her tears soaking into his worn leather jacket. When they reached the road, 50 bikes formed a protective shield around Colt's motorcycle, engines roaring like wolves rising for battle. They escorted Harlo and her mother straight into town. At the clinic, Colt held Harlo in his lap, while doctors fought to save Aubrey's life. Harlo shook uncontrollably, begging the world not to take her mother away. Colt wrapped his arms around her, his rough hands steady and warm. For the first time in years, tears burned behind his eyes. Hours passed. Finally, the doctor stepped out with a tired smile. Aubrey was alive, weak, hurt, but alive. Harlo collapsed into Colt's chest, crying tears of relief. Colt exhaled a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. The riders didn't leave. Not that night. Not the next. They guarded the clinic in shifts. Harlo never woke alone. Colt made sure of it. When she refused to sleep by herself, he sat beside her bed until dreams finally pulled her under. Over the coming days, the riders repaired the damaged home. They replaced the broken windows, rebuilt the walls, stocked the kitchen with food, and installed cameras and motion sensors. 2 bikers patrolled the area every night. Slowly, Harlo began to smile again, first small, then brighter, then full. She ran to Colt every time he visited, clinging to his arm like he was carved out of safety itself. Aubrey, recovering but still fragile, often watched the two of them from the porch with grateful, tearful eyes. She knew this truth deep in her bones. Without the riders, she and her daughter would have died in those woods. And Colt discovered something too. The hollow space inside him, the one left by the daughter he lost, had been quietly filled by a child who ran through the woods screaming for help and found him. Weeks later, when Colt prepared to leave, Harlo begged him not to go. The plea cut straight through his heart. He knelt, touched her small shoulder, and promised he would always come back. And he did, again and again, until people in town joked that Harlo didn't rescue a biker, she adopted one. The riders became more than heroes. They became family. The forest no longer haunted Harlo. The house no longer felt dangerous. And Colt no longer felt like a man walking alone in the world. In saving them, he saved himself, too. If this story moved you even a little, please comment, share, and subscribe. And tell us, what would you have done if you were the rider she ran toward that day? Sometimes the family we find is the one destiny sends running toward us, begging for help when we least expect it.